Friendship, you see, is like having a treasure in your life. It's that fantastic connection you have with someone who understands, supports you, and shares both the good times and the tough ones. It's like having a buddy who adds colors to your world and makes life's journey feel less lonely. Losing a friend to death is hard. It makes us feel very sad, like there's a part of our life missing. We remember all the good times we shared, and even though they're not with us anymore, their memory stays in our hearts. It hurts because we miss them, but we also remember the good things about our friendship. It is a true story. I had a friend who was more like a brother to me. He was coming to see me, used to live in a town named Colchester, outside of London, and was staying with me for a few days. When we had a conversation on the phone, he told me that he had a long shift and promised to see me the next day. We were very excited and planned what we would do on weekends. On the same day, after finishing his shift, he was picked up by his cousins because it was one of his cousins' birthdays. After celebrating the birthday at midnight, they decided to go where they could hang out so that they wouldn't disturb any neighbors, including their parents. They chose to go to the water reservoir. Once they reached that spot, they had good fun and started drinking. All of their cousins were drunk. A few minutes later, my friend decided to dive into the water, but one of his cousins noticed that he hadn't returned to the water's surface. A few minutes later, his cousin dived into the water. He knew something had gone wrong. As an experienced British Army water diver, he continued to look into the water, and he was not able to find him. All of them started shouting and calling for an ambulance and dialing 911 for help. After 15 minutes of struggle, he managed to see a hand, and he dragged him to the surface of the water. As soon as they took him out of the water, all the paramedics came. They tried their best to give my friend CPR, and cousins were questioned by the police, providing their reports to the police officer to find out about the accident. They rushed my friend to the hospital, and after an hour of battling, they pronounced him dead. I received a phone call from my friend's cousin, stating that I had to come to Colchester because my friend was in the hospital and his condition was not well. I still remember I was at the club when I received the phone call. I asked if everything was all good, and he started to cry. I knew something was wrong. I rushed to Colchester, which was 90 miles away from where I lived. It took us almost 2 hours to get there. As soon as we reached the hospital, he was already lying on the bed and was pronounced dead. I was shocked to see his body lying on the bed, covering his head, waiting for us. It was very hard for me to see him lying on a bed, who is no more, to share my feelings and the ups and downs of my life. I immediately called my mom to let her know that my friend was no longer with us. As soon as I mentioned it, she started crying, and she told me that she heard someone knock on the door and peeped through the peephole, but no one was there. She said that his departed soul knocked to show his presence on that night. On the same day, we decided to go back to London and promised his parents to come back for his funeral. On the way back home, I remember when I was inside the car, I saw my friend, who had recently passed away, sitting next to me in the mirror. I was trembling to see his images in the mirror, and slowly tried to look on the right. The image vanished. I thought it was just my imagination, and tried to get back to my senses. Once I reached home, my dad shared his experience on that night, where he was heading to a toilet. He felt droplets of water fall on his shoulder and tried to investigate if there was any leakage on the ceiling. But he was surprised that there was no leakage and ignored it. According to my dad, he felt the presence of someone else. and it might be my friend's soul. He reminded me of my mom hearing a noise on the door, suggesting that my friend's soul might have come to our house, as he promised. The next day, while I was in my room, surfing on my mobile phone, I heard a voice asking, "What are you doing?" It was exactly his voice right into my ear. I was very stunned and stuck, not knowing what to do. I was frightened to hear his voice, and since then I have not felt his presence, nor has he haunted me. According to cultural beliefs, after death, the soul will be roaming around the places for 13 days after leaving the body. It will be visiting their family and friends, but we can only feel it and can't see them. 13 days later after death, the soul is reincarnated, taking birth in another physical body or form. Passing from one life to the next, each soul is on a journey of spiritual development, facilitated in part by karma, the concept that every thought and action has a corresponding reaction. I still remember the day when we went on vacation, 15 days before he died. He saw a beautiful river and insisted that we jump into the water and swim around the river. However, that day I completely did not allow him to jump into the river. Sometimes I feel like if I was there on the day he died,